All right, here we are in episode 2 of our patch preview series. My name is Chris, and I am once again joined by my friend Johnny.
Just kidding. Hey everybody, I'm Johnny.
All right,
I'm joining Chris here to go over the patch notes. I was just messing around, pretending that I went AFK, even though he told me not to at the beginning. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Okay, I just I just like to mention that this is the patch that the midseason invitational is going to be played on here on 12.9,
Right.
and let's get right down to it with my patch change review duo partner here. First up is Ari. Now, I personally am one of those people that didn't even think she was needed that small rework she got a few months ago. I think she was one of the most well-balanced mages in the game. A lot of people were really happy with the changes, but my personal opinion is that now that the excitement of the initial changes is kind of past, I think she's kind of fallen back into the initial popularity she had before. My opinion on these changes is that I don't really think that they're warranted. I think so much for damage is gated behind landing the charm that increasing the cooldown of the ability is a bit unnecessary.
Yep, I'm gonna have to agree with that one. I mean, honestly, it doesn't really mean much for pro play either. She doesn't get played much in pro play because there's like way better assassins. You know what I mean? Like Akali and Oriana, LeBlanc, stuff like that. So I think that was completely unnecessary.
And then in regards to her ultimate, even with the fact that they added extra dashes if she gets takedowns to plus the initial 3 she starts with, I'm still perfectly fine. I think her kit is still a very balanced kit. I don't think she's bad. I don't think she's super good or oppressive or any way. So I don't really agree with these changes. You got any last things to say, Johnny?
Well, every time an enemy Ari gets on, my side from the other side, you know how sometimes when you play a game and the Ari goes 21 and 1 on the enemy team and she gets on your side, then she goes 0 and 12?
I feel like this is one of those champions that doesn't usually just take off that crazy like you're saying.
Yeah, I was just bitching because it happened to me this morning.
Not like
So,
a Zoe or a Fizz or one of those
Zoe,
types.
see, I think we're going to see a lot of Zoe and MSI. I'm really excited to watch MSI. So,
Well, I'm excited to hear your input from watching MSI because, as I mentioned in the previous video, I'm not really one for the pro scene, to be honest. I don't
yeah, we're
really enjoy.
definitely not going to see much of this Fox with 8 tails up her ass. I mean, Ari.
I think it's actually 9, but
Oh, 9 tails up her ass.
let's move on to our next change, and this one makes me a very, very happy man because in the past I did put a lot of time into this, and I kind of feel like Riot has kind of forgotten a lot of these older tank supports, Alistair, Tarek, Braum.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them need a lot of love, and I couldn't be happier with this change. And the first thing I'd like to point out right away, this is a cooldown reduction on the on-target cooldown of stunning someone again and again. This is not a cooldown on his Q to apply this effect. And then the damage reduction increase on his big door that he puts up. I'd honestly be fine if this was even 80 or 90% when it's maxed out with tools like Fiora's block, Pantheon, invulnerabilities well, and then Yasuo's wind wall. They're all way more powerful than this ability, and some of those you can even move while you're doing them. So I'm perfectly fine if it was even stronger than this change indicates.
Man, I wish I had more opinions on Braum. I only played him a couple of times, a handful of times. But with this change, I hope to see him a lot more in lower silver elo where I'm at to go against him. I think he's a really, really, really good support when you have a melee heavy team comp. But nobody gives a fuck about team comp anyways. So,
Well,
um,
I think you might be briefly confusing Sejuani's passive. Hers can only apply from melee allies hits. Braum's stun can be charged with his 80 carries ranged attacks.
is concussive blows is for everybody
Ev-
for every attack?
yes.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, wow. I'm really gonna see a lot more Braum. This is an awesome change.
This is a
I like it.
very, the 6 to 4 seconds might not seem like much, but I think that's a very large buff, and his stun duration does increase in levels all the way up to, I believe, 1.75. Yes,
Hmm.
1.75. I don't know when that caps out, but a 4 second cooldown essentially is very good.
Dude, just remember what we said last episode, man. Those 2 seconds with your dick in your hand, you're pretty much asking for an ass whooping. 2 seconds is forever in League. So,
Okay, it's a colorful analogy or metaphor there. Okay, let's move on to Hecarim. And Johnny, why don't what do you think about this change first?
he is gonna get way more love in the, I think, upper diamond now. I could be wrong. I don't know. I see him monumentally increased in gold and silver. So with this change, man, he's just going to be that much faster at the jungle, way more gank heavy, and it looks like he has way faster camp clear. So it looks like it's gonna make it so he could counter jungle as well, a little bit easier. So this is going to be an awesome change. Oh wait, no, this change went through. This is going to be great for Hecarim, even though, I see him a lot in lower elos, but it looks like I got to ward up more as a support. So,
Well, I'm pretty happy with Hecarim buffs. Personally, I think he's one of those champions that falls off pretty hard in the late game, and he is very good early on, very good in the early game, or in the early and mid game. But I do think he falls off quite a bit in the late game. He has received a good handful of buffs the last year and a half, with like the fear duration on his ultimate and a few other new synergy with his Q when it keeps stacking up. He has received a lot of changes. I'm really happy, particularly for the Spirit of Dread change. It's his only like defensive tool, and it was on a pretty silly long cooldown for how not
hmm
incredibly impactful the ability is. Now, that ability too also saw a buff. It used to have, I believe, I'm not 100% sure on this, so I might be wrong, but believe there was a cap on the champion damage for like 10 years or something, and they removed that, and now it's just basically a pure post mitigation omnivamp when he has this active. I would even go as far to say that the duration of the ability lasted longer if it was maxed out.
I wish they would have done a little bit more with Warpath, his passive. I think the little 5% bonus AD is great, but maybe a little slight increase to Warpath would have been a great change. I mean, I just oh, actually, no, it is ridiculously strong already with all these movement speed bonuses now.
Keep
I
in
just
mind, he
wish,
usually takes a phase rush.
yeah, I just wish you didn't have to build one way. That's all.
All right, we're going to skip down. We got a lot of bug fixes here. Next person we're going to talk about is Master Yi. Now, full disclosure, I am not a Master Yi fan. This is one of the champions that I ban a lot. I just think one of the concepts I like throw around in my head and to my friends sometimes is ease of snowball, and that's just how easy it is for something to do well and then capitalize on their lead. And I just think Master Yi is just it's too easy for him to become powerful without a ton of like interaction with the rest of the game. And I'm honestly, I still think he'll be very strong even with this nerf to the attack speed on his ultimate.
Man, that's why they call him Master Free. It doesn't matter. They could fucking nerf him into the ground, take away his sword. Uh, dude, this champion is ridiculous. They need to fix him.
What do
He's
you
just too.
do you think they should do kind of what they did with Aatrox, where they shifted him away from like auto attacks and gave him more abilities, something like that?
Yes, yes, I agree 100%. They need to make it so it's not just a point and click character. That's so silly.
Yeah,
Especially with, oh my god, the untargetable. They did it with Viego. They made Viego targetable when he could like grab his ghost under the tower. You know what I'm saying?
I believe
I
that's
think.
only to turret shots, but yes.
Yeah, but well, it's similar though. I think they should make it so Master Yi, if he alpha strikes and tower dives, at least for God's sakes, have the tower target him in the alpha strike.
To be
I don't know.
honest, I think that's like the one part of his kit that I'm kind of okay with because it's the only part of his kit that really has like a lot of decision making and outplay potential. That brief period of untargetability and aggro reset that Alpha
Mm.
Strike gives him, and you can juke things like Karthus's Requiem and all kinds of stuff with that very very brief invulnerability effect.
That is really unique to him. Okay, I'll give him that. That's a pretty good analogy on that.
That's one of the things I'd actually like preserved in his kit. Similar to Fior's old ultimate, I can't remember what it was called. It was like Blade Dance or Blade Waltz or some crazy shit, but it was kind of like that.
Oh yeah, when she flew through the air and stuck her sword up your ass, she was invulnerable. I remember that. That was
Uh,
the old Fiora.
yeah, a long time ago. One of the reasons why I don't think this change is going to affect him as much is his kit is just loaded with like statistical steroids. Another auto attack on his passive. He gets a lot of on hit damage on his W or his E,
Hmm.
whichever one that is. And he
Hmm.
still is getting a lot of movement speed from this, and it won't affect like the resets he gets when Highlander is up. And they gave him a monster buff like about a year or two ago where Highlander could just constantly be extended instead of only lasting a certain amount of time up to a point. Now it can last, if you're really abusive, it can last up to like a minute technically.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to this small Nidalee change. Now, Nidalee is one of those champions who I've always been kind of passionate about hating. Not in the same vein as Master Yi. I just wish she was a bit more flexible in her execution. I feel like she is just she's way too dependent on just landing the spear and getting that
Mm.
super Q follow up when the target is hunted from her passive, and you have to land the javelin to do that. In fact, in the olden times, I'm a little embarrassed to admit, but I was a top Nidalee player for a little while back when her ultimate had way more synergy with like an off-tank bruiser. It gave more movement speed, more. It even gave resistances back then. They've stripped away all of that. Her base stats were better back then too, and she had abilities that scaled with like more AD, pounce, swipe, something like that, and all that. Now I feel like she's lost a lot of that, and if you've ever wondered why you lost a game where your Nidalee did super well early on and then you had to start grouping and then things went to shit, it is
Hmm.
because this is just too binary of a champion in my opinion. And I'm pretty happy for her to see any buffs. This isn't nerf, but I'd be happy if she got any buffs to make her other abilities a bit more impactful.
Yep. I had a recent game where Italy was 25-2, but due to grouping and team comp in late game composition as well, boy, she sure did get her fucking spear broken right over her head. She is so useless in the late game. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
we took that spear and used it in wrong ways.
Well said. Okay.
Um, yeah.
You got anything else to say?
Well, I just wish, man, that they would restructure her late game a little bit more, but with doing that, I think they would make her just a little bit OP. Because she's a pretty good assassin.
Yeah,
But I wish,
yeah.
yeah,
She's very good, but she just has to land the
the
spear.
kill.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll
She
see. We'll see what Riot has in store.
I think the biggest problem with her is she just demands such an incredibly high amount of proactivity in the early game and so much production in the early game that it's just kind of unsustainable to be for this champion to be consistently good throughout the whole game or to have good games that a lot of times you see her. She needs to have such a great early game.
Yeah, I think some bronze shithead that sees a pro player do it and tries to do it, I really want to break their fucking fingers. So,
Yeah,
you know.
I can echo that. There was a period where this champion went mid a great deal. You never see that anymore because her wave clear is so bad, amongst other reasons. But man, I would just lose it when I had to play with mid Nidalee on my team.
Ugh. Jungle Nidalee on my teams. Let's move on. Fuck Nidalee.
All right, now we're getting into our first of two, actually three ish, First big change here, we got the mini Olaf rework, and this is gonna take
Oh my
some
God.
time. This one's gonna take some time. Why don't we just go through the abilities quickly? And we'll go back and forth with this. Let's start with his passive. Now, the first thing I want to point out, there are some goods and there are some bads. The first bad thing is, unlike before this change, where he could get access to 100% bonus attack speed from level 1 if he was really low, this now only starts at 40. He still gets the 100 later on in the game, but this is going to make for a less cheesy early game Olaf, that less level 1 cheese, level 2 run him down shenanigans where you're going to win the trade because he gets so much attack speed. Now, let's go with the good. The good is, now that they've shifted away the bonus lifesteal away from his old W, he now gets permanent lifesteal from Berserker Rage, and it actually is more than his old W active was giving him. Now, to offset this, he no longer has the flat healing amplification of his old W, which used to be up to 50% bonus healing from all sources in the for like 10 years. Then last year, this champion started getting a shitload of nerfs, and I stopped playing him top. Then it was like only 33%. Now they've just removed that component entirely. But one could argue it's a big plus that he gets the lifesteal permanently now, and all of the attack speed and lifesteal benefits now cap out at 30% of his missing life instead of getting them all at 0. What do you think, Johnny, for that one?
Boy, oh boy, that is a really interesting change because, like you said, the level 1 shenanigans are just gonna. You have to pick and choose now. It's not gonna be just run them down, stick your balls in their mouth, and then kill them. It's more like, pick and choose how you're gonna run them down, what trades you're gonna use, or yeah, that's an interesting change. I don't have much to say. I don't play. I stopped playing him after they did nerfed him into the dirt. But with these new changes, man, I want to pick him back up in the jungle, and possibly even as support since he has a lot of sustain.
Well, when we're finished with all of the abilities, I'll talk about what I think these changes mean for his power spikes and play overall. But for now, let's move on to his Q, Undertow. Now, this is going to be one of the changes that is going to... There's two big changes in his kit. This is change number 1 that is going to win him over in the eyes of a lot of prospective Olaf players and maybe new players. And that is the effect that he gets a giant flat percentage armor shred on his Q now that he can constantly reapply every time he gets you with the Q. But also the downside is it's more unforgiving to miss a Q now because it refunds less. It either refunds less of the cooldown or the cooldown is higher in general. It's something like that, but long story short, it's more unforgiving to miss the axe. This ability will not have the super easy stick potential that it did previously, but even with that said, it's still going to be pretty good for that. But this armor shred ability is just completely bananas. He was someone who always bought Black Cleaver for the most part, and this is just going to make you want to keep buying it because now it's almost going to be like 60% armor pen basically. And yeah, what do you think, Johnny?
Boy, oh boy, I would really love to see some Renekton Olaf bottom laners in that regard. I know it sounds silly, but in lower elos, you could pretty much do whatever you want. But with Olaf with this armor shred, oh my goodness, I can't wait to see him top lane. Especially if you don't have to buy Black Cleaver, so that opens up another spot for maybe a lifesteal item or attack speed item, some resistances. You never know.
Personally, I am a Bork boy, but yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yep. And, I mean, yeah.
I think Blade of the Ruined King is a very underutilized item. On a lot of champions, I get it first top instead of a mythic. People always make fun of me for that for sometimes, but I think it actually has the power of a mythic item for what it does. And now this armor shred is going to help the current health shred of that item's passive a lot. And I can't say how much this is going to help a champion that is very auto attack reliant and did not need Black Cleaver, but you're probably still going to get it because all the stats are still dynamite on Olaf. It's just a powerful, powerful change.
man, I can't wait. I can't wait. I might even take him jungle. And Chris, you get Blade of the Rune King, even on AP chance, because you're a fuckhead. Just kidding.
I'm
Just
not that.
kidding. Go ahead.
I'm not that far gone, but I do love me some Bork, and I do love me some Grasp on a lot of weird
Yep.
stuff. All right, let's move on to his new W. They renamed this. I guess Tough It Out is more applicable to what it does now than what it used to do. All this did before was give him like 3 different steroids in the form of attack speed, increased lifesteal, and increased healing amplification from all sources, which also increased his lifesteal. What they've done now is given him an extra tool to use when he's really low that'll give him a giant shield based on his missing health. I would have.
Ooh, man.
This does look like it's really strong at first, but I actually don't think it'll be as good as some people think. This is really going to be powerful only in like the supreme late game 35-minute plus games where he's sporting like a lot of times Olafs won't even build super tanky, they'll build a lot of damage. So this isn't going to be quite as powerful as people think. The fact that they gave it an auto attack reset though is it's a really nice quality of life change. It's going to help him farm under turrets if people start taking him top more often. I haven't seen Olaf's go top outside of myself playing it in a very, very long time. And I kind of feel these changes overall are going to really help him in the top lane and be more competitive as the game goes on. But anyway, getting back to these changes, or this W change, it is gated behind a certain amount of his maximum health. What do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, it looks like it's capped at 70%. So, you know, this is again, he's becoming a champ where you could pick and choose. Like you have to pick and choose. You can't just the old Olaf kit. You just rushed him down and then you hope for the best. You know, you hit your W, got a bunch of life still. You could just clap them with an E, and this is just he's becoming a pick and choose champ. Well, maybe you can go tankier and get that late game, 70% missing health shield and have a lot of good trades and counters, especially with other melee champs up top like Aatrox. That would be an awesome thing to see. Maybe even Kayn, in the jungle. Jungle Kayn fighting an Olaf. Now you get a giant shield. So they would have to build against that as well. So going the tankier route with Olaf is something that I would like to see, as opposed to like what you said is when they build him straight AD. Black Cleaver, Blade of the Ruin King, Trinity Force, stuff like that. So pretty good. I like it.
I just like to throw out here that they did reduce the duration of this ability, but it did keep the attack speed. All it did was lose all of the healing component that was shifted into his passive. Now, one thing I would like to throw out there is the way Olaf was prior to this patch, you could make a case for maxing his Q, his W, or his E first. The way these changes have panned out, I feel like this has almost pushed a W or E max out of the equation and forced him to go for this new powerful Q effect just so you can keep the stick potential and this massive armor shred. Before, his W max was so powerful as a sustain tool top. A W max build was just the amount of lifesteal and the healing application it gave you when you low was just such that in combination with his old passive, it would just have insane sustain. And I was a W max boy about a year ago before this guy got nerfed a million times, even though he was largely unchanged for like the last 10 years before that. And E is not as common. Reckless Swing is not as common to max, but I think it was still viable. Alright, now we're going to move on to the second of the two gigantic Olaf changes here, and that is they went the path of the Swain. As long as you keep auto-attacking someone, his ultimate does not time out. What are your initial opinion on that one, Johnny?
Jesus, man. These changes, wow. Once he gets in the thick of the shit in a team fight, he's going to run down these squishies like you would not believe, bro. He's going to stick those axes directly in the middle of their forehead and go all the way down to their fucking taint. This is going to be ridiculous.
One thing I would like to point out, though, is the 1 second huge movement speed bonus he gets from activating this. stayed intact. They did not change that or remove it. It is still just a 1-second movement speed bonus. So he's not actually gaining any more movement speed with this. And he still gets to keep the resistances where he actually became more squishy before. So this really is just, even with them nerfing the damage a little and nerfing the duration, this is really just a Titanic buff for him. It'll be pretty easy for him to keep this up for the most part, I believe. And for the comps that are a little more kitey and a little more movement speed, his ultimate will time out faster. So it's really just kind of a good play, counterplay, and laning buff for him in general.
Yeah, man, with that Ragnarok on, even though they reduced the AD by 5%, geez, man, that armor shred and the stick potential, with the it's, I suppose you could say it's indefinite as long as you're in battle auto attacking. So that's gonna be wild, man. I can't wait to see what it's gonna be like.
All right, now let me discuss these changes, Johnny. What do you think this is going to mean for jungle play, top play, and any other applications you can think of?
God, what a great tower dive potential with this new W, because essentially before I played him a jungle a few times, it's like, God, such hit or miss. Like, you tower dive, you just kind of go in, stick him, and then die. But with this one, you could actually pick and choose your outplay potential with this little bit of a shield that you get. Like I said, man, you got to think. You have to think a little bit more as opposed to just bum rushing in. So, I don't know what it really means for the jungle. I mean, the armor shred against again, like we were talking about for Hecarim, you know how the W was reduced? It's going to mean faster wave clear with this armor shred, because don't monsters have armor as well?
They do, but this is specifically a reduction to enemy champions.
Oh, sorry. Didn't even see that. I was trying to remember the best I could. Yeah, I guess it doesn't really mean much for the jungle, as opposed to you have to pick and choose your tower dives and be a little bit more wary of what's going on around the map.
One thing I'd like to mention, his new, I forget if this is his E or his W. His W. His new W, this Tough It Out, this is going to be pretty unimpactful in the early game when his health pool is pretty small and the base numbers on it are fairly laughable. But as the game goes on, and depending on the build you go for, even if you go for like not a tank build, but you still build all the AD health items, Titanic, Black Cleaver, Sterix Gauge, stuff like that, this is going to be a very big shield.
Yeah, dude, Sterix Gauge on top of the W active is going to be ridiculous.
Yes.
I don't know much about early game. I don't know about early game.
Well, you're going to take at least 1 point just for the flat bonus that it gives you for 25% missing health shield.
Yeah, that's what I meant about the potential for a little bit better tower dives. So.
Yeah, and what Johnny said is absolutely right. You're going to see a lot of Sterix usage on this. In fact, I'll one-up that and even go Sterix and Gargoyle Stoneplate and this ability. Yeah, I think that would be a pretty funny build with a lot of HP, and you get the triple giant shield. And you can buy both those items together, which I think goes over a lot of people's heads. It's one of the few kind of silly combination items still left in the game. They've rooted out a lot of that stuff, like you can't buy more than one lifeline item because of Graves a long time ago with his True Grit plus Sterix plus Maw build that he used to get. So you can only get one lifeline item now, but Gargoyle Stoneplate and Sterix can both be bought at the same time now.
Wow, that's great.
All right, now my personal opinion is this is going to make his early game a little bit weaker, but I do believe this is going to help him scale into the game a lot better. I also thought, similar to Hecarim, I think Olaf was a little better in the late game than Hecarim, but this is going to help him scale into the late game just magnificently. I think this is... I'm a little salty because I liked kind of the state that Olaf was in about 15 months ago before he just started getting hit with nerf after nerf after nerf, like 5 of like the last 10 patches. It was really sad, and it was at the height of me playing him top. I just kind of got into it and had a fun time with it, and the W max was just, it was utterly silly. So I guess the nerf was warranted.
Well, I mean, he was really, really, really popular in pro play. So I think I could be wrong.
No,
Maybe that was a
you're
while ago.
right. I mean, last time I saw, I think I remember him being played consistently.
Yep.
So my final recommendation is this is some good late game stuff. I can't get over that armor shred. The infinite ultimate is just going to be hilarious. He still has the CC immunity. And one final thing to point out, similar to Master Yi's Highlander, when you're in Ragnarok, you are immune to cripples, attack speed slows, such as Nasus Fior's Malphite's attack speed slow. Even though that is not technically a hard CC effect, you are immune to cripples while in Ragnarok. Something to take in account of the fact since he is so auto attack reliant.
Yep. No exhaust is going to work on you. Well, I guess the base percent, but not the slow.
I'm not 100% sure how that specifically interacts, but it does make you immune to the cripple, but maybe not the damage reduction.
Correct.
All right, now this next one, I'm going to have to throw it over to our resident Pike expert in the house.
What? I don't play Pike.
Oh, I swore you played this champion a pretty decent amount.
No, I played him like one time, and then I died 30 times, and I got flamed for like the whole game, so I dropped him. I
Wow.
suck with Pike.
I'm sorry, I thought this guy was knowledgeable. My bad. All right.
Oh, I'm a piece of shit, Chris. What are you talking about?
All right, I'll take it here. Now, this is going to hurt. This is going to ruffle some feathers, but my personal opinion, I think Pike is the unhealthiest champion in the game in terms of gameplay. That is my personal opinion. I could totally understand how people would disagree with me. I'm sure he's a very satisfying champion. Personally, I do not like the champion very much. I think he's just way too high reward for way too high reward for way too low risk. He's just so slippery, so slimy, and his ultimate, the fact that it doesn't do damage and it's simply a threshold kind of thing like Urgot's ultimate, it's just so powerful on a champion that can be so incredibly low econ as all supports have to be. And for that reason, I just found him pretty unhealthy. And like right as he was released, this was kind of my initial opinion. Far from like similar 80 supports they've added like Cena, who I think is a very well-designed and balanced champion that I myself kind of like, even though I haven't played her much outside of like ARAM and stuff. But I do really like her, and I do think she's a very solid support that they added to the game. Pike, on the other hand, I gotta say, I just don't think he's a healthy champion. But
Did you say Cena?
yes.
It's Senna, you fuck.
Okay.
Listen to what Lucian says when he dies. For Senna.
All right, maybe you're right. I'm sorry.
I'm kidding, bro. Go ahead.
All right, so our first change, all it did was increase his gray health when he's around multiple. A lot of these changes are meant to push him back down to bot lane and get him the hell out of mid with that quick Tiamat build of his, where he just permanently tries to roam his ass off. And I'm not sure I care where he tries to go. I'm always up for more flexibility when it comes to champions. I don't really have much of an opinion on this change other than just further incentivize him to lane with someone. And then as far as him getting just, mana refunds on his Q, I really don't think that's necessary. No other champion in the game with a grab gets like a mana cost refund when they hit a champion with their like yoink ability. I'm looking at like Nautilus, Thresh, the works.
Blitzcrank, yeah.
Yeah. No one else gets that for making a play with their playmaking ability. And his Bone Skewer is, it's right up there with the best of them on how long it is and how far they come back when they get hit and stuff like that. So I'm not a super fan of this change. What do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, that's going to really make for some interesting, Q harass. Man, that's going to suck for some squishies in the bottom lane. I don't agree that it should get the cost refunded, but I do think it's really awesome that if you hit your skill shot, you're going to be rewarded. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
it's always a good change in theory. To compensate this, they obviously made the ability a little more costly. So yes, it's more punishing if you miss it. So now you're rewarded, like Johnny said.
Mm-hmm.
And then the biggest change in these is, for some reason, they thought it was a good idea to lower the cooldown on his ultimate, even though it's honestly one of the most powerful ultimates in the game and the hardest to react to. The animation is lightning quick on this thing. Even if you are expecting it and predicting it, a lot of times you'll still screw it up. I've been there many times myself. You think you know the timing, it's just that fast.
Sometimes I flash into it, and then I break my keyboard.
It's a very unique hitbox with the whole cross thing and all that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, dude, a pixel in the hitbox, you're fucked.
Or a pixel outside the hitbox and you still fucked.
Oh, excuse me, that's what I meant. Sorry, that's what I meant, yeah. The pixel outside the hitbox is you're still fucked.
With that being said, I actually think it's one of the more accurate animated hitboxes in the game. I've seen some times where you're actually in between two of the lines and it won't hit you, so it's definitely not one of the more egregious ones, and I'll always point to Jinx's ultimate as the most egregious animation in the game.
Fuck, dude.
That thing can literally go 2 Teemos over your head, and it'll be behind you, and then it'll explode because it hits you somehow. It is,
man.
It's just criminal. That one's the worst.
And then my Annie will flash on top of like 5 people and then miss her fucking stun. Fuck you, Riot. Oh my god.
I'm not sure if that one's as bad.
Okay, well, fuck that Annie player then.
Okay. All right, now this one hurt him in his own gold generation because now he doesn't give himself the cut. I honestly never understood why he gets a percentage, or he gets the item of the your cut thing when he kills someone, because he's already yeah, I'm not explaining this very well, I'm sorry, but I don't think...
Well, he's a pirate. He's a pirate.
He is a pirate?
He's a pirate.
Oh, okay, I thought he was just some, like, drowned victim serial killer.
Oh.
Don't blame me. I don't listen to the lore in this game, like, a damn bit, so I don't know.
Richard Ramirez.
Who's that?
The Night Stalker? Never mind. Nothing.
Anyway, basically, this is just a big nerf to the gold that he gives his AD carry and himself. And kind of like Draven, all this is going to do is put him more in line with every other champion in the game. Like, if you have a Draven, they are going to freak the fuck out on you when they don't get to cash in their fucking 200-300 glory or whatever the hell it's called. That the fact of the matter is, all that does is give him the same money as every other champ in the game. These money things, they're just a luxury. It's really nice to cash in on these, but it's really not the end of the world. Draven is so powerful inherently with his just kit in general. But this is a similar example to that, I feel. What do you think about the money, Johnny?
Yeah, I never knew why he got part of the cut. Like, I don't... Yeah, I never understood that.
Yeah,
it
makes perfect sense why he gives it to his ally. I thought that was actually really intelligent design. But
that was awesome.
Yeah.
I love that part because it's called your cut. So why the yeah? I don't really have much to say on that. You know, can you explain number of your cuts from assists reduced from 1 to 2?
I believe it's just the amount of the actual item. And the way that your cut works is it is a random number generator, I believe, from like, is it 50 to 100? Oh, it's no, my bad. 100 to 300. Yeah. It just is a randomly number generated from that range. So I didn't actually know that he gave people 2.
Oh, I see what it's saying. Yeah, okay, so you could click. That's why. All right, yep. So you just get one of the coins. I understand.
Yeah, I just like to throw this out there. Me and Johnny might not be interpreting the wording of this correctly, so sorry for that. All right, let's move on to our newest thing on the Rift, Renata. Now, I gotta say, I think Riot does a really good job with champion design and having champions whose kit feels like they flow together and very fitting of what the theme they're going for, and even champions that I think are a bit weak right now, like Aurelion, Solar, Ivern. I've always thought that their kit and their design felt really complementary to each other. And then Renata came out, and I have to say, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people disagree with me on this, I think Renata is probably the worst designed champion that they've ever put in the game. I feel like her abilities just don't really resonate with each other. I feel like she has a super powerful, this W, which like lets people revive if they get the takedown when they're like half dying or whatever. And then she has this just insanely powerful ultimate that's just super disruptive in team fights and can cause a ton of damage between her enemies. And those are great abilities. And then you look at the rest of her kit. You see this passive, it's just kind of awkward. It's based on like auto attacking, which is not really something she really wants to do. And then she's got kind of like the worst grab in the game. It just feels awkward the way they move. Just kind of barely displaces them like 3 Teemos. And then she's got her most unimpactful ability on her E that just shoots those little missiles. They do like no damage. They don't shield for anything. I just feel like this was a really rushed out champion. And I gotta be honest, while I do think her W and her ultimate are very strong, I feel like the rest of her kit was just very poorly designed. I think a lot of people are gonna not agree with that, though. What do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, man, her kit, like I feel like they should have had, you know that little her E, the shield, it should have came out faster and gave a little bit more oomph. I played her a few times. I don't know what she offers in terms of like laning phase as opposed to just grabbing somebody and getting lucky, but her R definitely just changes the momentum of the game. That's for damn sure. But these changes are really, really good, just in terms of trade. I think she could trade way better. She could pick her shields better, and I don't play her much. I play against her a lot, and she's always been just negligible. For me, anyways, I don't find her that threatening. And if anybody has a quarter of a brain cell, they could just walk to the left or right away from her ultimate. So,
Yeah, it's not quite as slow as Maokai's ultimate, but it is pretty slow.
yeah, I mean, I don't know why they reduced her armor. That's silly.
Yeah, I think in the highest level of plays, people are able to leverage her W and her ultimate to a much greater effect, and I suspect that's where these changes are coming from. Because,
Oh, okay. I
yeah,
should stop thinking like a silver.
yeah, I really don't think she sees as much play in the like lower echelons of play, or of league, I mean, or ranked and whatever. I think she's a very, yeah, she has extremely high impact abilities, and I think that's where you see her as up in the higher ends.
I see. Okay, well, I don't have much of an opinion. I think, like, I agree with what you said. It was just way too rushed in certain circumstance, or in that regard. So she's
Yeah.
just situational.
One last thing I'd like to say is that when this champion like first came out and I saw all of her kit, I was almost positive she would just get like a buff across the board. And much to my surprise, she's been nerfed almost every patch since her release. Which I guess I got the wrong take on this champion. So we'll see what the future holds. I actually expect something of a rebound on this champion in terms of these patch changes. I think she'll kind of get buffed eventually once like the novelty of her ultimate kind of wears off.
Yeah, and again with that W revive, at first it was really hard to play against when I was playing, and then once you learn, man, to just walk away from the gray health, similar to when a Lowy ults and you just kind of walk away, she really wasn't that impactful. So I like these changes.
Yeah, all right. Let's move on. And now this time, I am going to successfully throw this over to our resident Gator player. What do you think, Johnny?
Oh boy. Finally, after months and months and months of waiting, he gets some love. Jesus, dude, this took forever. Yeah, so the attack damage growth is going to make him scale way better. His Ruthless Predator, I like that they empowered it a little bit more, and he's gonna be that great lane bully that he was, when a few patches or a few years ago. He's gonna be that awesome lane bully again. He got really swept under the rug. I don't like what they did with Renekton. Everyone really shit on him for a while, and especially when people picked him pro play, I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, why is he playing Renekton?" All these comments from the viewers are saying, "Oh, Renekton's, he's negligible. He doesn't do anything. It's a bad pick," so on and so forth. So I'm so happy that Riot finally gave him some love, and now we get to see him maybe a little bit more in pro play, maybe in some ranked and lower elos, higher elos, and I can't wait. I cannot wait. This is the best I've ever seen.
I like what you're saying there, Johnny, and as someone who also plays a fair bit of Renekton and something I bust out against a few niche things like Kale Top, I think you have to be really careful with this champion because he really is just that much of a oppressive early game bully. And even with the weakened state that he was in, he still was a really early game bully. But I have to say that prior to the Pantheon rework, I have to say I think Renekton is the poster child for champions that fall off in the late game. Do you agree with that, Johnny?
I agree 100%. That's why the attack damage growth is really, I think that's really nice. So it's going to help him a little bit more in the late game.
And so will the extra. What is that? That's 5 more, 18. That's like 90 extra health when he's at 18. Every little bit's going to help. And the biggest thing to point out with this change is this W change is really meant to give him an extra choice of what to max second. I can't speak for every Renekton out there, but I think it's pretty common practice that you always max Ruthless Predator last because so much of the power is in the gigantic flat AD ratio and not the base numbers. And this is going to make people think between Ruthless Predator and Slice and Dice.
That's correct. Yep, because the armor shred on Slice and Dice. That's what I was saying about the Olaf play as well. In bottom lane, man, maybe we could see some Slice and Dice and Olaf Qs, work in the bottom lane and lower elo.
Maybe we'll have to play some normals and see if we can force that into the meta because that does sound kind of funny to do.
Sounds silly, doesn't it?
Such an aggro duo, I guess. Anyway, and then this change to Dominus. I mean, it works just like Nasus's ultimate, but his is like a health shred, which is a lot better than Dominus. But I'm really happy with this change too. Now, the one thing I'm really unhappy about is a few patches ago, they like super hard nerf Dominus. His like rank 2 and rank 3 Dominus health gain was really hit. He lost like 100 off of 11 and then like 300 off of his rank 3 Dominus. I believe he got like 800 bonus health or something. I got to be honest, with the current atmosphere, I would like to see that nerf completely reverted and once again give him a very powerful flat health gain when he's in his ultimate.
That's right, because,
which he keeps the max health percentage of when Dominus finishes, so technically it's kind of a heal.
I would love to see that because, against champions like Dr. Mundo or Malphite or Ornn or whatever, any top laner, Darius, man, that Dominus really just made it was a difference maker. It really was, especially against Darius, Dr. Mundo, people that could chase you down, stuff like that. Singed even, It really helped a lot. But when they nerfed it, dude, Renekton just, God. What a bummer.
I'd like to add, he only had that buff for like a few months or a year before they took it away from him too, and he really needed that buff.
Yep, he really did. He really did.
All right. On the whole, very happy to see Renekton buffs. He's very bad in the late game. But let's move on. Next up is Rengar. Won't talk about this very much. The big hype about Rengar recently is how much bonus damage he was doing, or extra damage he was doing to structures with his Q and stuff when they changed it to allow him to critically strike structures. Thankfully, they did away with that because it was about a month of pure silliness. Now, this change is purely for his jungle clear. I'm not extremely familiar with how fast or slow of a clear Rengar has, so I'm going to give Riot the benefit of the doubt with this, that it may have been too quick. Do you have anything to say about Rengar, Johnny?
I don't. I've never played him, and I played against him, and I don't really know.
Yeah, I actually, if I had to have like assassins in the jungle, Rengar and Kha'Zix would be my go-to picks.
Really?
They're really the only... there's just something about them that, while obviously they're not like even off-tanks, there's something about how they operate which I feel gives them more usefulness in like team fights and a team comp than other even more like squishier stuff like Shaco and stuff like that.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree because Rengar is a suicide kit backline diver. Anybody that could just all turn around and CC him into the ground, man, pretty much leaves him negligible. But I could be wrong.
You're not completely... Yeah, you're not wrong. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I don't really prefer Rengar on a team comp unless it's like against a bunch of squishies. But Anybody
Yeah.
with a relevant team comp can just shut him down hard.
Anything that just keeps him out of top lane, really annoying to play against. I'm actually just tired of seeing Rengar top, honestly.
Yeah.
So,
When my Rengar goes top, you better believe he gets his ass whooped. You
yeah,
better believe that.
it's very hit or miss, but it's very annoying too.
With a name like Stanky Feet Jones, you know that motherfucker's gonna get rocked.
Yeah.
Fucking idiot.
All right, we won't really go over this Shyvana change. It's merely to point out that they made the damage occur more frequently to be more reactive to, like, the time she invests rather than just applying once every second. It's not a very big change. You want changes like this. They've slowly moved over to stuff like this. Any dot damage over time effect that was like every second has been moved over to every half second or every quarter second. This doesn't really change anything. It just looks nicer in the game when stuff is very responsive. There's not really much to say about that change.
Let me tell you one thing about this Scion change coming up.
Mhm.
So, in a ranked game, this we were clobbering the enemy team. Now, what Scion did on his side, he bum rushed the towers. He just went tank build, bum rushed the towers with Hullbreaker over and over and over and over. And Riot implemented that silly, what the money bag? What the hell is it called? Excuse me. What's the reward system? What's that reward system where if you're losing, you get more money?
You mean the bounties or objectives or whatever?
Yeah, all he did was just bounty himself back into the game. So these changes, it looks like they nerfed that unbelievably ridiculous nonsense for lower tiers to where Scion could just bring the game back by bum rushing towers over and over and over, which is how I lost that game that we were ahead on.
Yeah, this is purely a nerf to Inting Scion, which if you've been playing for a while, has
Yep.
been a thing for several years since his rework. A little bit after his rework, people stumbled upon the old Inting Scion strat. And I believe this is pretty much a direct change to a popular streamer who's made their career just playing Inting Scion and abusing like certain runes and item activates, particularly Prowler's Claw, while he's in his Glory and Death passive. And
I know the streamer's name. It's like a single name, right? It's like I remember his name, but I can't think
it's
of it.
like the boss or something like that.
Baus, yeah, Baus, Baus.
Yeah, something
Yep.
like that. Yeah, this is like his bread and butter, so it sucks to be him. But this is pretty. This is pretty unhealthy. No one wants to play against this stuff. It's the kind of like split pushing that isn't really clever because you're doing your best to not interact with the other 9 players in the game. I gotta say, I'm not gonna shed a tear over this one bit. You're still gonna see Scions trying to like split push and running away with their ult or doing whatever. And
Yep.
he's still gonna do a ton of damage to structures when he's not in his passive, which is how every other split pusher gets to operate. So I don't feel bad about this one bit.
That's exactly how I feel when I'm playing. I'm just like, it's just so boring. It's just boring. Just watch them over and over and over. I mean, hey, props to players for abusing the system, man. That's a good way to find a way to do something and no one could do anything about it. Hats off to them for figuring that out. Good for them. But I'm glad Riot addressed it.
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy with this change, but I would never malign a player for finding their niche and executing it really well. And
Yeah,
I
good
know
on
that
them.
I know that guy is a really highly ranked player.
Good on them, man. I'm glad they figured it out. But
All right, now we're going to move on to our last really big change of the patch, and that is the Talia. I can't even really call it a MIDI rework because they changed frickin' everything.
bro, Big Nose, huh? She could smell Braille. Look at that.
Okay. All right, we won't go over this like litany of stat changes. My first impression of this is I don't think they completely wanted to push her out of the jungle, but this is a 100% set her up for more mid play, maybe even some support play now. This might be even one of Johnny's new champions since she's a mage. Who knows?
I 100% agree.
This is a lot of very favorable changes to casual players, a lot of stuff. Rise has seen a lot of the same treatment. His kit has been simplified again and again and again and again. And this is exactly what we're saying here. We won't really go over this passive change. All you need to know is they made it a lot better. It lasts longer when you're not hugging the wall and you're faster. This is going to complement a mid-roaming style really well. Let's get on to the biggest change of all of her changes, and that's the way her Q functions. I'm not going to go over all of the figures in all of these changes because they're pretty convoluted, but I will simplify the biggest thing, and that is when she does her Q and it creates the worked ground, her next Q is going to consume the worked ground to launch a boulder that will do twice as much as the initial rock from the primary damage of a non-worked ground Q. Now that sounded like some convoluted shit, but I gotta say, this is going to help her in the 1v1 and the laning phase just immeasurably. The worked ground mechanic really held her back from being able to participate in the laning phase, from having to constantly move out of the worked ground and drop down a new one every time she Qs. The fact that every other Q in the same area is going to launch this giant boulder is really, really going to help her. What do you think, Johnny?
Yep, I agree. I'm gonna show her some love as a support now that she has a little bit more damage output, and she doesn't have that potential to just get counterplayed really hard. That when she's on that worked ground where she can only shoot one stone. So I really like this change. I can't wait to play her mid or support. I'm basically a glorified mid laner because all I do is play mages down bottom, anyways, which people rage about. But that's my niche.
That's
And man,
yeah.
I'm so glad they gave her a buff, bro. That's awesome. I always loved this champion, even though I made fun of her. I've always loved this champion.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, I'm kind of the opposite. I wanted to get around to playing her, but I just not have given around to her. There's too many other things I liked more to pick up. But I gotta say, my first impression, this Q got enough of a buff to be worth picking her up all by itself, never mind all of the other changes. And with that being said, I have to say her Q is definitely far and away the most impactful change she received. All the other changes on her abilities are merely kind of just splitting hairs a bit. There is one more worthwhile one, but let's move on to her W Seismic Shove. Now, this ability lost its entire damage component, but the fact that she can have another form of her Q to use when the worked ground thing is on there really is perfectly fine. This thing didn't do a lot of damage anyway, and her new Q is going to make up for so much of her problems that she had for all this time.
Chris, keep in mind too, her late game seismic shove, it doesn't have a cost, so she's going to be setting up for some really good plays, man. Really good plays.
You're absolutely right about this, but it is worth noting that is her rank 5 Seismic Shove, and based on what I'm seeing, there's no reason why I think you would max Seismic Shove first or second.
Nope, but I just in terms of late game, when in lower elos where it's getting down to the wire, that's going to make some really cool decision making. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, one last thing I'd like to point about Seismic Shove. I don't know if too many people would agree with this. I think this is one of the hardest skill shots in the game to land. Champions, it was a small circle, and you had to do it very quickly to get the effect, and you had to pick the direction. It worked just like Rumble's ultimate with the way that the direction you push them in. I think this was definitely one of the hardest skill shots in the game to land. And I'm happy that it's going to go off a little faster and that the hitbox one got a little bigger.
Yep, I love that. Just kind of like the little bit of a Cho'Gath Q, if you will.
A little bit. Now, moving on to the only other significant change that she got is now the rocks she throws out have a stun component instead of just doing damage when people are thrown through them and slowing them when they blow up or walk over them and stuff. This ability, been pretty much just all across the board. They made this ability a lot better, and you can be hit through multiple rocks, and the stun will stack for up to 2 seconds. Now, it's just, and more than compensate for Seismic Shove losing its damage along with the Q buffs.
Now, I'm trying to think. it only it's like it kind of grounds. Oh, I wouldn't necessarily say it grounds people, but it does counter anybody with a dash,
You know,
which is kind of cool.
it's funny you mentioned that. When I was reading this, I kind of thought that they should have added a grounding effect to this ability because I feel like it really
Yep,
fits what this kind of ability is similar to Miasma Cassiopeia or
absolutely.
Singed is Goo or whatever. This felt like a grounded kind of ability, and maybe we'll see that in the future because that's really what this feels like since you have to push people through the effect.
Yeah, but I do like the fact that you could set up some CC potential now. You just sock them with your rock right into the stun. That's pretty cool. They can't really dash out, or perhaps they can. That might confuse me. If you knock them into the stun, does it stun again if you dash, or does it just stun once? I don't know. Right, might we'll figure that out, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time going off a lot of these little tiny nitpicking stuff.
Yeah.
Suffice it to say, we're just pointing out the highlights, and giving it a stun component is obviously a huge change. Let's move on to our ultimate, and I gotta be honest, I was hoping for a little bit more out of this. They just made it really more responsive. They increased how fast she jumps off, how far she jumps off. They just made it a more consistent, like, positional tool, and they didn't really change much else. That's pretty much all I got to say on it. It's just more consistent positioning tool.
Yeah, I like how it just is a really good zoning tool as well. I think her ultimate in itself is really kind of dog shit, just for the simple fact that it's like literally, I think it's the only ultimate in the game that doesn't fucking do damage. I could be wrong, but I swear on everything, every champion in the game has an ultimate that does damage. This one does not.
Actually, Callista's ultimate also does not do damage.
Oh, right, because she puts them in the ghost form and like slams them.
Yeah, but then
What
it's
Callista's the
Fate's
AD carry, right?
Fate's Call is what it's called. But yes, it is a knockup, but it doesn't do damage.
Ah, okay.
Not
Well,
not to
I just
nitpick.
that's a bummer, but
No, I don't think this ability needed a damage component. It is what you say it is. It's a zoning tool first and foremost.
right.
Uh,
And okay, no, go ahead.
I was just saying that with all these changes in mind, what do you feel like? Better mid, better support now. What do you think?
I feel like she's probably likely a better mid. However, she's going to be a dominant support if you could get your kit down well. That's what I think.
I
Because you could,
100%. Yeah, I'm sorry.
yep, you could go ahead and cut them off on the bottom lane, get some really good plays, make some really good dragon plays. It's going to be great. Now, I wish they would have added a component to where allies could surf with you on the wall, but I think that would have been too broken.
Yeah, that's a little bit much. That's like Bard on crack.
Yeah.
Actually, it's about the same as Bard, so they're both on crack.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a bit
Yep,
much.
yep.
Yeah, I fully expect to see this champion get some support action now. The biggest reason I say so is because now that they've made Seismic Shove a little easier to land and gave the stun component to her the W rocks that she throws out, I really think that that is the big thing that's going to help her on support. And of course, what we talked about, the absolutely gigantic Q change where every other Q she can fire the boulder instead of simply throwing out a single rock shard when she's on word ground, which was just pathetic before. It really
Yep.
it really hampered her play to have that super reduced Q when she was on word ground. So I fully
Yeah.
expect her to get some support action. I'm not
Yeah.
convinced she'll be able to still hang mid, but she's obviously going to be way better than she was.
Uh, I can't wait, man. I always loved that champ. I can't wait to pick her up as a mage on support in some normals and see if people threaten to kill my mom. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, your chances are pretty high. All right, now we move on to Thresh, and I gotta say I'm very pleased with this change. I gotta say that I feel a lot of the time Threshes don't make much of an effort to get all the souls they can because it has such a high drop rate, and it isn't really extremely centric to his kit, unlike the Mist with Senna, who is very, very centric to her kit. I'm very happy to see this. He doesn't gain armor per level. That's why he has this passive. And yeah, I think this is a very good change. What do you think, Johnny?
I'm going to be seeing a lot of Threshes. I'm going to be playing a lot of Thresh, and the shield from the Dark Passage is going to open up a lot of opportunity for some counterplay. Can't wait to see this. This is going to be great, and also it's gonna make a lot of counterplay to poke Thresh as he's getting his souls, because it seems like players would be a little bit more desperate to grab them now. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, with 25% increased scaling from a permanent scaling mechanic, I have to say I think you're absolutely right. And in case this actually escapes some people out there, you can pick up his souls by throwing the lantern at them. I don't
Right.
think 100% of people are super aware of that. People that play him, yes, but people that play against him, I don't think are very much aware of that. Now, the problem with this change, I actually think this is such a good change, and Thresh has been such a staple of the consistent support since his release, that I'm actually afraid they're going to do one of those changes in the next patch where they completely pull the rug out from under Thresh, where they give a champion a buff, and then they give him a nerf in the next patch that just completely basically makes the initial buff pointless. What I'm seeing in this one is I wouldn't be surprised if in the next patch the base shield strength on Dark Passive actually gets reduced to compensate for the increase in shield ratio for extra souls. I just feel like
That's
they do
right.
that. I feel like they make those kind of half-ass changes a lot.
Well, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what the players say, because this is just based solely off, is it going to be a 55-minute game and he's going to be ripping guts out of people's asses, or because he gets nasty in the late game. Him, Vagar, Senna, all those people that scale with stuff like that, man. We'll see if Thresh makes We'll see what happens.
One thing I'd also like to point out, since this is the ability power kind of goes over a lot of people's head, I think that not only this gives him armor but AP. His ultimate is 1-for-1 with AP, so
Yep,
it's a bit of
that
a
hurts.
in the late game. It's a bit of a small little nuke. All right, let's move on to Varus. Now, these changes are merely a revert to a nerf he got a few months back when, yeah, I'm not exactly sure. His lethality was big at the time, so people wanted to take some away from, like, extra steroids he was getting at the time, and now they've saw fit to revert the nerf. I don't really know the specifics behind this reasoning. As far as the Blighted Quiver change, they have dicked with the numbers on this thing like 6 times in like the last 5 years or so. They're never happy with like how strong or how weak the damage on this is. All I can say is for someone that builds him, I'm an AP Varus fanboy, so this is obviously a huge boon to me. But as a champion, if you're just building him standard like 80 carry, having on-hit magic damage that's like even this high, I feel like is really powerful. I'm not really sure what to make of this change. I think Varus is very solid AP, AD, or lethality. I'm not a big fan of the lethality Varus, but a lot of people seem to like it. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, AP Varus, I'm gonna report you next time I play. Um,
Yeah.
Honestly, dude, these changes, I really want to see him more as an AD carry as opposed to a Q poke champion. Ever since the lethality was, introduced and increased in all the items, all he has been is just a Q champion, which is really boring to me.
Yeah, I hear
With
you.
this bonus, I'm sorry, what's that?
I said, yeah, I hear you. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I find that a tad bit boring, because his passive just makes it so Varus is like an attack, like an AD carry. Like you go in, man, you just whoop their ass with auto attacks, especially with Blighted Quiver. Popping that is like, oh my god, dude.
Yeah,
So
his trading potential early on is absolutely disgusting.
bonkers.
He's very difficult to trade against early on because of the blight stacks and the blight passive damage, and this is just going to help him be even more stanky. Even though I think everyone will still max his Q.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to see him come back as an auto attacker as opposed to a long range poke. So that's just my opinion.
No, I completely agree. I wish, yeah, I mean, when you have someone who queues for 80 carry, it's the understanding that they're trying to be a hyper carry, basically, right? So when you have someone that goes for this like artillery build, then the obvious conclusion is they don't have the sustained DPS to fulfill, the AD carry position that I think most people are expecting of them. So this is kind of
Right.
I'm not much of a fan of the all-in queue kind of builds either.
Yeah, it's similar to remember when Kog'Maw got that rework where his W didn't have an attack, so he was like, "Ah!" and it didn't have a cap.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so like we don't want Kog'Maw to be some type of like W poke champion. We want him to be an auto attack champion. Like I'm glad they didn't have Kog'Maw. They worked him to where he just solely relied on his W or his ultimate, to just be that champion. Oh, I'll just do one thing. I hate that.
It's
I hate
funny you
that.
mentioned that. AP Cog has actually seen a brief resurgence the last few months.
I have noticed, trust me, hybrid as well.
Yeah, his W is still really disgusting.
Bro, I played a ranked game the other day against hybrid Kog'Maw. I got my ass handed to me thoroughly.
Yeah, he can really surprise you sometimes, even though he's so incredibly vulnerable. He just puts out
But
so much damage.
luckily we had Malphite and he got fucking blown up late game, so there you go.
Yeah.
Malphite just came in and nuked his ass.
All right. Our final change, but it is a pretty meaningful one. Johnny, tell me what you think about the Hull Breaker meta that's just taken top lane by storm since this item came out.
Alright, so in silver play, everybody, silver, from silver 4 to silver 1, all people do is go Scion, Yorick, or Tryndamere and just Hull break the dog shit out of the towers and do Volibear as well. They do it forever and it's become the most boring non sequitur nonsense. It really just made it a bummer to play in silver. It's just so boring. So much usefulness for counterplay.
Yeah, you mentioned a few champs, but I got to be honest. I think anyone that builds AD has been building this.
That's correct. So I'm so glad they nerfed it finally. Fucking
Like,
for God's sakes.
Yeah, they did nerf it as a bad first item purchase, but funny enough, they actually made it even more powerful as a late game investment, which I think people are going to just look at like the increased stats later on in the game, and far from disincentivizing them to get it first, I think this is just going to encourage them to want to get it sooner so they can start reaping those extra stats. Now, I think a lot of people might get their mythic first instead of this. People were getting this first though most of the time.
I'm glad on the flip side though, it's forcing people to have some type of counterplay though. It's forcing newer, younger players or players that have played for a while and are hard stuck to force them to be on a team comp for counterplay. You can't just have a Hull Breaker, Scion, Yorick, Volibear, or Tryndamere just bum rush your fucking towers and win. That just it can't be done, man. You have to think about team comp and counterplay. You have to know what to do against Hullbreaker. It's going to teach people a lot of things.
Yeah, when I think of Hull Breaker, I immediately think of an item that I just had nothing but hate and spite for, and that is ZZ Rot's Portal. When I think of this
Oh my
item,
God.
I think most people hated that item because it pretty much did essentially what Hullbreaker aims to do. The problem with is Hullbreaker is actually more annoying because it actually shifts the power into the person holding it, where ZZ Rot just created pressure where the player wasn't, so they could actually go push in another direction. And both items, I think, were kind of unhealthy for two separate reasons, but they both kind of accomplished the same thing. In theory, I don't really have a problem with Hullbreaker giving bonuses towards like someone who wants to focus on split pushing. I mean, if there was an item that like rewarded people for like grouping with their teammate and gave bonuses per ally champion they were next to, I would also be all for that.
There used to be, remember Sterix, the old Sterix? You get like a 20% life steal for all your party or some shit.
Oh, you mean
you remember that?
It was Stark's Fervor, yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Oh my God, man.
It was like Stark's Fervor or Zeke's Herald. Yeah, I remember what you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a good one. And remember the old Aegis of the Legion and Runic Bulwark?
Oh
Yeah.
man.
That Runic Bulwark, it was only in the game for like a year because it was just so incredibly strong. And you could run like 2 of them on one team.
Wow. Yeah, I hope eventually they remove Hullbreaker. It just made it for unhealthy play. I could
Yeah.
be wrong though. Maybe I just suck at the game, and I'm bitching like, oh well, people now they just bum rush the towers. It's boring because
No,
it doesn't really offer, but it doesn't really offer like to pick when to split push, to do it smart, to do it coherently. You just fucking bum rush the towers and get the objective bounties. It's just silly.
I completely agree. I really don't like it either. But the reason I don't like it is because for the amount of offense it gives you, 50 attack damage, it gives so many defensive stats, a lot of health, and the amount of armor and MR it gives is just. There's really no other item in the game who has this combination of powerful stats. Any other item in the game that has this much armor or MR, for example, the amount of armor that, say, Frozen Heart or Thornmail gives, none of those items would also give a ton of this much offensive potential, and vice versa for tank items, or for
Yeah.
AD items. I mean,
Yep.
so that in itself, I feel, is a bit unhealthy, and this is one of amongst the cheaper legendary items in the game. So the least they can do is bump this up to like 3,300 or something.
Right. Well, I'm going to be interested to see if they remove it or if they nerf it or what these nerfs now mean. So we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see what happens.
I gotta say, I kind of hope they remove it. I'm not
Same.
really of these items that kind of force a certain play style. And maybe I'm wrong to say that. I'm sure there's some exception that I'm not thinking of that's a pretty good case. But the way Hullbreaker functions, I gotta say, I'm just not a fan.
Yep, I agree 100%. I'm not a fan, but you never know. They might have done it for a reason. So,
All right, that concludes our changes of 12.9. I tried to get this video out the day of the patch, the day that the patch hit this time. And it's going to be a little while before we get to 12.10, but we hope to see you guys all there. Got anything to say, Johnny?
nope, go fuck yourself.
Okay, man.
I'm just kidding, Chris. Thanks for having me, bro.
Yep, it's always great, and I hope to see you at 12.10.
All right, man. See you 12.10 later.